Hey guys, Ryan here. Just sitting up on this mountain. See how green it is? Back in May it rained almost every day. And it seemed like a really long time and a lot of rain. But now we're getting to see the fruits. This is the greenest that people have seen Colorado from what I hear. I've only been here for a year, so this is new to me. Alright, so I'm going to talk about our lives, your life. It's your life. Okay, it just came up over me, this theme of it's your life. No one else's. And each other person's life is their life, and no one else's. And so what I feel on my heart right now is just this encouragement about your right to stand firm and live your own life freely, to be free. Okay, we live in a society that calls people selfish and not nice and rude and too much and over the top when they choose to live authentically and live freely. And so the way that this whole human game, this whole human life plays out is that, as I've talked about many times, we grow up conditioned to believe, our mind is programmed to believe that we don't have the right, that we don't have the freedom to live authentically and live freely. Okay, because whoever our caregivers were, mom, dad, whoever, at the end of the day, if we ever got in conflict with them, where we had one idea and they had another idea, they win, because they're bigger. So it's like, oh, I don't want to go to school. Well, you're going to school. I don't want to go to the doctor. I feel fine. No, you're going to the doctor. And so we're raised, and so were they, so were we all, with our minds conditioned that, hey, when there's conflict between two people, we have to fight for our right, or we don't deserve our freedom. We don't ultimately get it. And so we feel repressed, we feel suppressed, and our emotions don't flow freely because in order to stay connected with mom and dad and our caregivers, we had to cut off certain parts of ourselves. We couldn't feel all the feelings that were there. We couldn't express all the energy that came up in our body when there was any conflict. Because anytime there's conflict, which is just, two people's wants rubbing up against each other, our body births a little bit of energy through releasing chemicals for fight or flight. Okay, but most of us just freeze. It's starting to rain on me now. And when we freeze and we don't do anything, all those years that we didn't act authentically, as I talk about, that energy gets stored in our bodies. And so that stored, repressed, blocked energy that we're unconscious to, that we're numb to, that's what gets triggered when we get upset, when we get scared. That's what's happening, is our mind is saying like, oh no, don't feel these feelings. Don't express this energy, because when you did it a long time ago, you ended up getting shamed or punished or abandoned emotionally by mom or dad or both. And so those are our fears. And so this journey of finding your freedom is facing your fears, stepping into the fire. Okay, and I want to use a little example about your freedom and how to maybe see it in a new light. How to see that you deserve to live freely, to break those cords of codependency with your past, okay? Until we break those cords that were connected to mom and dad, even if mom and dad or whoever our caregivers were, are long gone and have passed away, if we haven't worked through those emotions, we are still attached. We are still limited by those old beliefs and old patterns. So it's kind of like our conditioning, all the rules that we had to follow, or we'd get in trouble, or we'd get shamed. Okay, most of us, if we haven't broke free and broke through, we're still following those rules. We're still living under that tyranny. It's often called the tyranny of the shoulds. All these voices and all these thoughts from the past and around us currently that are telling us what we should do and who we should be and how we should act and what nice means, and not to be selfish and not to be rude, but to be kind and to share And it's all these voices. It's like the voices of all of our parents and our parents' parents that have just gotten conditioned into our society. And it's everything but saying, hey, be yourself. Live freely. Life is good. The universe is kind. You can be who you are. You know, it's so funny how that theme is so predominant in our culture in terms of the movies and songs and books. You know, this be true to yourself. But then when you actually start to do it, our society gets uncomfortable because people aren't doing it. Most people aren't. Most people are living under the norms, the rules of society. And so when people like you and me, when we start to do it and live freely, we break it. We're uprooting. And I've used the analogy before of like we're like a flower in a flower bed, you know, sharing nutrients, sharing soil. Everything's kind of happening the way that it is. But if we want to really bloom and blossom into our fullness, it's almost like we're uprooting. And as we do that, the flowers, the people around us, they start to go, hey, hey, that's making me uncomfortable. And it's because it's triggering energy in their bodies. It's triggering fears. It's triggering discomfort because they see a freedom that they don't have. They see energy getting expressed, freedom getting expressed that they haven't given themselves the freedom. And so what happens is the mind, the way that humans respond is it's easier to clamp down on someone else. You know, I was talking to a really beautiful woman at a party the other night, and I was just telling her how much I loved her fashion. She had this like flowing, kind of like a kimono gown on that had these beautiful flowers on and this beautiful jewelry. And I just said, hey, I love your fashion, and I can tell just from looking at it that you are brave. And that you are more free than most people, and the colors mean that you like to have fun. And like she really lit up. She's like, yeah, you know, I got divorced 2 years ago, and I've just really stepped into my fashion and just expressing myself in the way that I dress. And she said she was sharing with me some stories that people, things that people had said to her about her fashion, that she could feel like a little bit of people not wanting her to be so bright. People say things like, only you could pull that off, but with a little bit of a tone of like, of kind of disapproval, you know, or like, you're really gonna wear that? So interesting how fashion, oh, it's getting really windy. I'm gonna stand up and get under this tree. It's raining on me. Fashion is just such a simple example of what happens when you start to live freely. You know, when I got this septum piercing, people around me, they make comments, and I get private messages on Facebook of people saying, looks like you got a booger in your nose, or, you know, get that shiny thing off your face. Or it's amazing how things trigger people's discomfort, okay? Because if it's just genuinely a taste difference, someone might say, hey, I really like the way you look without your septum piercing because of the symmetry of your face, or something like that. You know, it doesn't have an energy of judgment to it. But when it has an energy of judgment to it, what that is somebody feeling discomfort because the freedom that they see in us. And then they lash out and they make comments to try to hold us down. It's the herd mentality. I've mentioned it many, many, many times before. Okay? But it's time for us, it's time for you, if you desire, to really own that your life is yours. You can live freely because you are good at your core. And so when you follow your heart and when you let your intuition lead you, and intuition is tuning into silence, going inward with your attention, and waiting until you get direction about which way to go when you have a decision to make, as opposed to just reacting out of the mind. So when we follow intuition, let our hearts lead, it just takes us on a beautiful journey of awakening and opening and freedom. And I can tell you from experience, it's an explosion. Okay, what happens is whatever gender you are, you know, if you're a man, your masculine energy really starts to come up and come out as you release your repressed rage, because our society hasn't let us express anger. So when you do it in healthy ways and you get that rage out of your system, and pretty soon it dissipates and you soften, and so you've got strength and you can act with ferocity when you need to. Wow, it really is getting windy. But then what also happens is the feminine parts of us round out. And if you're a woman, same thing. It's this beautiful rounding out. It's like a flower blossoming. And when a flower blossoms, it has so many beautiful colors, and it's got sacred geometry and perfect beauty in the way that it's shaped. But when it hasn't fully blossomed, you know, it really just kind of looks a little bland. It's so not its potential. And so what I'm saying here is your full authentic self is so freaking amazingly beautiful that I'm just breathing wind into your sails to say you can do it. And just know, as you do it, the people around you that are closest to you will get triggered. They will react. It is your life. It is your freedom. So I want to tell you a little story. I was at a party the other night. It was a beautiful group of guys. It was about 25 guys. This guy Jason hosted it at his house, and I only knew a couple of the guys there. And we circled up at the beginning, and everyone went around and shared their name and a little bit about themselves, and it was just this nice time of connection that Jason facilitated us into. And then there was this really great guy, Josh, who kind of kept that connection going. He said, hey, this is a nice kind of intimate connection that we all have. Let's stay in this, you know, being present together. And we did for a while, and the connection went really deep. Then the party started, and there were people inside, there were people downstairs, there were people out on the porch. And I decided that I wanted to play some music and really get this party going. So I made a playlist on my phone, and I had this little speaker that it was a Bose speaker that had really great sound. And I said, I'm going to take this out onto the porch, and I'm going to play these songs. And I had the volume picked that I wanted, and I went out there and I put the speaker down on the railing of the porch. Okay? And Josh turned to me, and he was like, hey, let's turn that down. He was talking with some other guys. Hey, let's turn that down. Okay, and this is where we can consciously make our decisions, and we can choose our freedom. Okay, and knowing that sometimes we're going to face resistance, and we're going to be called selfish, we're going to be called rude. But I want to share with you like how I tend to do it, and I feel so good about it because it's just such a change from who I was 3-4 years ago and beyond. I would have just, you know, in order to not be judged as rude because I didn't know people there, I would have just kind of caved. And every time you cave when you don't feel good about it, or you make a decision that isn't really your authentic choice, it's like, that's like the child mentality. It's like, well, I kind of have to do it or else a consequence will happen. You know, I'll get in trouble, I'll get grounded, I'll get sent to my room, I'll get spanked, I'll get shamed. And so when he said, hey, can we turn that down? I felt the energy in it that seemed like it was kind of like an expectation, as though like, hey, him kind of saying like, because I want it turned down, you know, turn it down. And so, you know me, I said, okay, well, whose boundary are we minding if we turn it down? Because what I was curious about is this because we don't want to disrupt the neighbors? Is this because Jason, the host, has said that he wants things a certain volume out here? And if that was the case, you know, then I would respect that. But if it was Josh just kind of telling me to turn it down because he wanted it turned down, well, here's the point of my whole video, is that it's our life, our freedom. We can choose to do with it what we want. There's no right or wrong that anyone else can judge us for. Our right and wrong gets determined by what our heart says, what feels right to us. So Josh said, well, no, I just want the music lower because we're talking. And I said, well, and I'm being totally connected, you know. I just said, well, I like the volume the way that it is because it's a fun party and I like the music. And it was Guns N' Roses, so, you know, Guns N' Roses and a party go hand in hand. So then he and the guys kind of like looked at me like, really? You're not going to turn it down? And I just started like dancing a little bit. I was like, no, I like it the way that it is. And there were some other guys around that started like jamming to the music too. It was like 10 people out on the porch. And so this guy Josh came over and he's like, well, I just don't really, you know, feel good about that you're just going to keep the music where it is. And I said, well, yeah, I like it the way that it is, and you don't. And anyways, we ended up talking through it, and he didn't like my choice. And then later on in the evening, he came to me to talk to me about it, and he shared with me how he felt. He thought that it was rude. He thought the fact that I didn't turn it down for him was just kind of not nice. And so what I shared with him, which he got it and he understood, and we really had a nice connection as we worked through that bit of conflict. And what I'm here to share with you is that it's our life, it's your life, okay? So when I go out on that porch and I have that music playing and he says turn it down, okay, what I'm asking you to see is that no one has any God-given right to get things the way that they want it by controlling other people. So when he says, hey, turn it down, you know, I'm a man with my music, playing my music, and he's a man not wanting the music played, okay? So we're on equal footing. When he says, hey, turn that down, and expects me to do it, that's where I'm different than most people, because I recognize, hey, I'm perfectly free to leave the music exactly where I want it. And he's perfectly free to ask me to turn it down. And it can go a number of different ways. Okay, so stay with me, because a lot of people will hear this. It's like, well, Ryan, that just seems kind of mean and rude. But that's the question that I ask. Is it? What makes it mean or rude? You know, couldn't we consider, if we're going to consider something mean or rude, him trying to control my party and my music and my fun by, you know, turning me down, squelching me? Couldn't we consider that mean or rude? I don't consider it mean or rude. I consider it free people living freely. And that's what I always talk about, how we're going to experience conflict when we live freely, because we come up against other people's wants. Our desires come up against other people's desires, and then there's friction, and that's conflict. So if I had just turned it down and felt, you know, like, oh yeah, I'll turn it down because I don't know these people very well and I don't want to get judged, like, I'm not living authentically, because what's authentic for me is, hey, I want the music just the way that it is. And so when he says turn it down and I say no, then guess what? There's some conflict and we work through it. But what I'm pointing to is that in your life, anytime you do something that like triggers somebody else, or someone else feels like you're stepping on them or that you're hurting them, they might get that attitude that's like, hey, turn that down, turn you down. And what I'm saying is, you are free to be yourself. And just because someone else doesn't like it, just because someone else thinks that it's less than, that it's mean, that it's rude, that it's unkind, that it's just not proper, okay? That's where go and feel those feelings of judgment, and don't allow the judgments, if you don't want to control your behavior, because that's what society is. Through our conditioning, we essentially are like living in these little cages that we've been conditioned into. But guess what? If you turn around, the door to the cage is wide open, but it takes you to walk through it. And as you walk through it, other people in the cages will say, no, no, you can't do that. You can't do that. No, 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 don't do that. You got to stay down. You got to stay like us. You have to stay small. And what I'm here to say is, no, there's lots of people coming out of their cages. And when you come out of your cages, that's when you truly act out of kindness and compassion. Okay? So back to the music story. You know, what Josh and I talked about later on is that there's lots of different options. Like if he doesn't like the music out on the patio and he recognizes that I'm not going to change it, he can say, oh, hey guys, let's just walk right into the house and we can continue our conversation there if we want more quiet. Or we can just continue to talk and recognize Ryan wants the music playing and he has the right to that, so we'll just keep talking. Or if he had said to me, Ryan, we're having a really intimate conversation here and we're really at an important part in it, would you be willing to turn the music down or take the music inside? See, when I'm invited, freedom, which is our core characteristic, it's our nature. And when freedom is respected and honored, freedom then gives. Freedom then has compassion. Freedom then likes to serve other people out of itself. So when we respect other people's freedom and we don't try to control them and judge them, hey, turn that down. Hey, can we turn that down? But it's more like, hey, you totally have the right to have the music on if you want to, but would you be willing to turn it down a little bit, because we're really having a great conversation here and the music is kind of affecting it? I'd be like, sure, yeah, absolutely. So do you see what I'm saying? When we are free, we tend to treat other people with compassion, and we respect their freedom to be free. And when we all are more and 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 more respecting each other's freedoms, really good things happen, because we can flow freely with each other. We can recognize, hey, I'm free, but so is everyone else. Other people are free to, Josh is free to kind of tell me to turn that music down. I'm not going to get upset with him for telling me to turn it down, but I'm going to know what's okay with me and what I want. And so what I'm encouraging you to do is to own that freedom, to live from it, to know that people are going to push on you. And when it triggers you, when that judgment makes you feel uncomfortable, is to feel your way through it. Because as you go in, you feel your way through it, you allow those feelings to move. You express it. Go into a room, express the anger, get all the rage out of your system, shake your body, get that energy out, okay? Let your body dictate to you how it wants to release it. All kinds of stories will come up from the past. You'll be releasing energy that was bound up from all the years before. And as you get that out of your system, you become more and more relaxed, more and more rounded in your expression and who you are, and it starts to show in every aspect of your life. Your love gets bigger, your connection gets deeper, your leadership gets stronger, your compassion gets brighter, okay? Your tenderness becomes just such a part of everything that you are, and your strength, when you need that to act decisively, you've got it. So from me to you, it's your life. I invite you to take it and make it yours. From me to you. Love you.